Hello, everyone. Welcome. Tonight is part 2 of our advocacy series for the Parent, Family, and Community Network from the National Association for Gifted Children. So my name is Jessica LaFollette. I'm the current chair of the Parent, Family, Community Network, and we're so excited to have so many attendees with us here tonight for Advocating for Brilliance. This is our part 2 of webinars about how to advocate for your bright, gifted child. And we have 3 amazing panelists with us this evening, and our moderator is Dr. Callie Fedor, and she'll be asking questions of our panelists. They'll be responding, and then at the end of the session tonight, we'll also be taking questions from attendees. So as you're listening tonight, if you have some questions that come up, please put them in the chat or in the Q&A feature for the panelists, and we'll bring those up at the end. And I'll also be in the background responding to things in the chat. Tonight's session is being recorded for everyone who registered, and also we'll be taking notes. So we'll have an entire summary of the discussion to share with you at the end as well. Thank you so much for everyone being part of this evening, and we look forward to the discussion. Callie, I'm going to let you take over from here.
Thanks, Jessica. Hi, everyone. My name is Callie Fedor. I am the chair-elect for the Parent Family Community Network. So I've been working alongside with Jessica and learning from her over the last year. So I'm excited for part 2 and to reintroduce our panelists for those of you that were here the first time or just joining us this time. And then we'll kind of get right into our list of questions that we have. So I want to start with giving Christine Dietz, Dr. Dietz, a chance to do her introduction.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Dr. Christine Dietz, and my biography actually has gotten a lot shorter this year because I recently retired as the Associate Director for the Gifted Center at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. I am still teaching gifted and talented courses to graduate students, so I haven't fully retired, but I happily have over 40 years of experience in the classroom and at the university level. My expertise comes to you today after years of study and at the university, but also life experiences as a parent of 2 young men who were identified for gifted services as children, both completely different individuals, and helping them navigate through life according to their learning needs and their social and emotional needs. And then as a grandmother of 6 granddaughters, whose needs are as varied as the flowers in the field. So that's what I'm bringing to the discussion this evening. I want to thank personally Jessica, Callie, and the Parent Family Community Network for having me this evening.
And thank you, Christine. We're happy to have you back and you giving us time, especially in retirement where you could be doing so many other wonderful, fabulous things, and that you're taking your time to join us and continuing to share your knowledge and experiences. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Simone St. Clair, Dr. St. Clair. Simone, I'm sorry, you're still muted.
There we go. I want to say hello, and my name is Dr. Simone St. Clair, and I appreciate everyone's attendance tonight. I know that evenings sometimes for parents can be a little chaotic. So I'm bringing to the table over 20 years in gifted education experience. I started my career in elementary and was a K through 6 elementary coordinator, going into classrooms and providing differentiation and also doing pull-up programs. And then I received my gifted endorsement and certification here in Pennsylvania. And then I moved to the high school level since my certification was K through 12. and spent 6 years at the high school level. So transitioning students from ninth graders to young adults was a very interesting and a passion of mine to see them through that journey. And I'll share some of my experience with the questions that we have throughout the evening. And then now I am at the middle school level. So I'm now working with 7th and 8th graders. I also am the immediate past president of the Pennsylvania Association for Gifted. And I've also written and been part of NAGC's Teaching for High Potential and writing articles, as well as Parenting for High Potential. So both magazines I've been publishing in recently. I'm also involved with Teach Plus, which is an advocacy group for diversity, equity, and inclusion and funding, and also the teacher pipeline. So I'm working on that fellowship for this year. And then also I teach online science for grades 4 and 5 from the pandemic on. So I've kind of been in that for 4 or 5 years now of teaching online. So I have an array of different experiences, and I hope really to just share some of those experiences with you, because when I started 20 years ago, I really didn't know anything about gifted education, because in the state of Pennsylvania, you only have one course on exceptionalities, and gifted might be one 10-minute or 45-minute discussion, depending on each professor that teaches that class. So I really want to be accessible for you, as well as just giving you some knowledge that I've gained through my experiences. So I thank you for your attention this evening.
Thank you, Simone. And our third panelist, Tracy Elford, I know she was having a couple technical difficulties. So I see that she is kind of popped out of our meeting temporarily, but when she comes back, we will take a moment and have her introduce herself, and wherever we are, she can jump right into a question. From being with us last time, I know she understands the structure and flow, so I know she'll be good to go. And before we start with the first question, just a little housekeeping, because I've noticed a hand or two get raised in the attendee panel. So we aren't calling on you to open mics tonight, but we are using the chat feature, and we do have both Jessicas kind of in the chat answering. So please, if you do have questions, use the chat feature, and we will either respond via the chat. Some questions we will pull over to the doc we're working on. At the end, when we have time, we open those questions up to our panelists for additional information. So just a little housekeeping before we get rolling here. So we have a list of questions, and so we're going to start with our first one. And Christine, you're going to be our first panelist to get us started. So our question is, what are some effective ways parents can establish a positive collaborative relationship with educators when advocating for their gifted child?
Thank you so much for the question. And Simone, thanks so much for reminding us that you're at the middle school level. I too had many years at middle school. We are a special breed. And more importantly, our kiddos that we served are so special as they transition from elementary and grow into that high school student. It's really exciting to be part of their little crazy lives. And how important are our parents during that time? So our question is, how do we work on that collaborative effort? Well, it has many responses. And I will respond as an elementary teacher, as a middle school teacher, and actually, I don't have parents of my graduate students contacting me. So that's where my experience ends. But as elementary teacher and my middle school teacher, I think the number one thing is for parents to know that teachers during the workday, are consistently in transition. We're either transitioning from reading to math, from math to science, science to social studies, recess to lunchtime to bathroom. There's 1,000 moving parts in the classroom. Parents, when they've got a burning question, will sometimes meet you at the door and ask that question. How's my child doing? How's this and how's that? my advice is to build that beautiful, strong, firm, collaborative relationship that we teachers and parents want. You want to schedule time where you can have a meaningful conversation about your number one investment, your child. So catching a teacher at the door can just be frustrating for not only the teacher, but also the parent. Other than saying hello, catching the teacher at the car is absolutely fine. Please say hello. That's all part of getting to know your teacher and building that relationship. The other thing I would say is, I've got 2 more points. The next one is, at the beginning of the school year, which is pretty much right now, prepare a teacher-friendly goodie bag on behalf of your child. It does not need to be expensive. Please don't invest a lot of money, but a small bottle of water and an energy bar and a colored ink pen or a highlighter. You have no idea how much we appreciate just the thought that goes into have a nice day, and here's something to get to know us by. We are a caring family. I care about my child's progress, and I look forward to building that relationship with you. And then have your contact information. Just on the side. Yes, they do have that in a database, in a file base. Of course they have that, but just to have that little reach out is just very meaningful. And then the next thing that sometimes we don't think about is learn the teacher's gifted language, because gifted and talented, affective needs, social emotional needs does not mean the same across the United States. You can read an article that was written by somebody in Colorado. It will have nothing necessarily to do with how they speak gifted over in Virginia, or in Arkansas, where I live, or in Minnesota, where they have a whole different set of rules. So there is no national plan for gifted. There is no national language. We do have a federal definition. It's about 7 sentences long, but then it's up to the states to define giftedness, provide services, and hopefully have a funded mandate, which means that they'll actually pay for services. But that's a whole nother conversation. Learn your teacher's gifted language and ask for clarification. Well, what do you mean by social needs? Or what do you mean by skill building? Learn their language, ask questions during your conference, take notes, no recording. That's kind of intimidating, but take notes and then refer to them, and look up the terms if you don't want to ask during your conference, but go home and look them up.
Thank you so much, Christine. So Simony, I'll just reiterate the question. So what are some effective ways parents can establish a positive collaborative relationship with educators when advocating for their gifted children?
Sure. I would piggyback off of what Christine is saying, and also know that your language is powerful. So just if we think about that for 1 second, we really can start that positive collaboration when your language is positive, and also that you're appreciative of what teachers are doing, because at times we don't know what all is on a teacher's plate from day to day, and it might differ. And also know that parent-teacher relationships are essential because they enhance students' self-esteem, they improve academic performance, students develop better social skills when they have that constant support network between teachers and parents, and it also helps their overall development. We also know that gifted students have their own personalities, temperaments, interests, abilities, strengths, limitations, learning styles, and life experiences. So, depending on your child, one thing that I would suggest is maybe doing an opening letter to a teacher that describes your gifted learner. Talk about their strengths, their weaknesses, how they learn best, and then maybe, a few of the goals that the student might have for the year. Maybe it's learning multiplication, maybe at the high school level, it's doing an internship, or doing some type of mentorship or maybe doing a dual enrollment. I know that those are conversations that I have with my 11th graders going into 12th grade. Do they want to come to school a half day and then go, to a community college or take classes online? So those are all conversations that would happen between the teachers, guidance counselors, and the parents and the students. I would also try to find a gifted ally. So that could be the gifted teacher, or the gifted coordinator. It also could be someone in the guidance department, or maybe it's a previous teacher. So that way they can kind of, that teacher from last year or the year before be like, oh, I just talked to Johnny's mom yesterday, and, we talked about, his love for learning, and this is what I found that worked, in my classroom. Because that learning curve does take a while in the beginning of the year that Christine talked about. At the beginning of the year, you have 30 little ones, or 130 maybe at the high school level, that you're trying to get to know personally. And so sometimes those relationships take a long time to develop. But if you can kind of preface that at the beginning with a letter, it kind of helps speed up that learning process for gifted learners within the classroom. Also, you can email teachers and just ask how you can help or assist. That could be through supplies, volunteering in the classroom, or just support that they might need on a daily basis. As we talked about before in my bio, I didn't have any gifted experience when I came into this career or profession 20 years ago, and I really had to learn it hands-on and through my experiences. And then once I had that first-hand knowledge, then I was able to go back and get the professional certification to kind of, mesh those two experiences together. But just knowing that they have, someone at home that's supporting them. And then when that you have, struggles at home, you can also email them and say like, hey, this happened last night. I don't know if their personality will be different, or, hey, they won a karate championship this weekend. And then that could be something where the teacher can, talk to them about. So like they know that the students know that the teacher is well invested in them and really cares about the whole child. You could also buy them a year at a state or a national organization. So like I know the Pennsylvania Association for Gifted has a membership that's only $35. So there's all kind of different things that gain access for parents and teachers for that. Also, you could have them, a membership for NAGC or for STANG, which is supporting the emotional needs of the gifted. So, academically, the children might be doing okay in the classroom, but some of that asynchronous development might be occurring in the classroom where the students are bored and they're acting out. How do we address those social and emotional developmental needs? And then at the end of the year, you can also, go to the guidance department and ask, not necessarily for specific teachers, but you could also just say that you would like someone that complements the students' learning style for the next year. So not necessarily asking for specific ones, because I know sometimes that gets dicey, but just asking for someone who understands the gifted population, or maybe does more hands-on activities or things like that to kind of help establish those positive collaborative relationships. I think it's key. And you definitely get more with honey than you do with vinegar. So establishing those relationships is key.
Wonderful. Thank you, Simone. Yes, the relationships are huge, hugely important for everybody involved, but most especially your children, because they're at that building all day with their teachers and support staff. And so if they feel that positive connection between home and school, they are going to thrive better. Thank you for those points. Tracy, I see you're back on my screen. Are you connected? No. Okay. And then Jessica, we do have some questions in the chat popping up now. Okay. So Tracy, I know you're working hard on it, and I will keep checking back with you to jump in and join us. So I appreciate your continued efforts to figure out the mic issue. That's crazy, because I know you were with us before and had no problems with your mic last time. Technology, it's wonderful when it works, right, folks? Do I hear her? Thanks, Tracy. All right, we'll move to the next question. Tracy, do you think you get it figured out? Just jump on in. We're happy to have you join us, and I'm sure Christine and Simony are good with that too. Our second question is, how do you navigate challenging situations where an educator may not recognize or support a child's giftedness? And we're going to start with Simony, and then we'll check back with Tracy and see how she's doing, and round it out with Christine.
Sure. I would say the first thing is really, grant grace. As I mentioned before, there are many hats that a teacher plays within your child's school day. So, if the teacher doesn't necessarily respond in 12 hours, please don't get offended by that. Just because we might, when we're not on our computers all day, that means that we're interacting with your children. And so sometimes we might be at the end of the day, like 50 emails deep that we need to navigate through. So please, allow them that grace. To make sure that you're looking at recognizing and supporting those gifted kids when the situation might be a little bit complex, or that you feel like you're not supported in the school system. Please know that you can always convene a gifted team. So that might include the guidance counselor or a previous teacher. And then also you can contact the guidance department or potentially, the principal or the school psychologist that initially did the gifted screening or testing. Also, like I know in our district, it's the special ed supervisor that has the umbrella, and it's gifted is under that special ed umbrella at my school district, but each state may be different with that. So just know that there might be someone specific for as a gifted director within your state. Also, you can bring an advocate. So that might be someone from your community or another parent, and to kind of, if you are kind of get jammed up in your feelings and you can't really get things out, or you're just completely frustrated that you shut down, an advocate could be someone that is important to share what you're experiencing with your child in the school system, or even it might be something that you're experiencing at home. I know in Pennsylvania, we also have the Office of Dispute Resolutions, which kind of helps parents mediate, as well as school districts mediate between the two sides. That would probably be my last, resort, but just know that there might be something within your state that could potentially help you with mediation. You could also reach out to other gifted parents to see how they handled similar situations. Because again, remember, you get more with collaboration and being on the same team than you do on opposite sides where things are never really resolved. So I think that those are some initial spots that you can go ahead and try to navigate that challenging experience. And I'm sure Christine has some too, but I'm an open gifted coordinator. Like I know parents sometimes are like, well, I don't want to complain, but like, if I don't know something's not going right, I won't know. So like, I know one student, he was accelerated, and at the secondary level, we kind of let the kids come to us because their days are completely packed with subjects that are required. And so the only time I really have to interact with them is during activity period. And so sometimes our gifted kids are involved in so many other things like band or student council or National Honor Society that they don't get a chance to come and see us. So if parents are reaching out to say, hey, listen, like, can you please talk to my daughter or son about, a specific topic, I can absolutely pull them. But if I don't know about it, then I can't help and be an advocate within the school day for your children. And then I'll turn that over to Christine.
Well, let's first see if Tracy got back on with us.
All right, can you all hear me?
We can hear you. Welcome.
Sorry, everybody. We've been having just awful technical problems here. Just a quick introduction. My name is Tracy Elford, and I am a parent of multiple gifted children. And I have been an advocate for parents for going on 20 years at a local, state, and a national level. And I am just delighted to join you all and hope that I can just give you a perspective, just from a parent. And if I joined in the correct place, we are talking about navigating our challenging situations.
Yes, we are. You're on it.
All right. So talking about challenging situations where an educator may not recognize your child or child's giftedness, and I just want to start by saying this is hard. It is a tough situation, and I actually have two facets to my answer on this one. And the first is that there are people, educators, administrators included, who object to the term gifted. And some of them may simply not recognize the characteristics in their children. And what I try to tell people is to try, and I include nicely and politely, to use other words than gifted to describe the situation. I recommend that people talk about the situations that they see at home. You know, for example, my daughter is getting 100% on every spelling test since school started, and she doesn't have to study. Is there a challenge list that she could do weekly? Another observation could be, you know, my son understands the new math concepts the first time you're teaching them. Is there something related he can do when you repeat the materials for others? And if you go in, again, politely and using, you know, examples of what you see and what you hear, people are more likely to do something for you. The second facet of this answer, and this is kind of a real life answer, and that sometimes we're stuck. Sometimes there is a situation where you don't have an out. And I will tell you, this is a situation that my family had firsthand. We had a teacher who told me that she didn't believe in gifted. And we were not going to change her mind, and there is no way she was going to change ours. We knew that our son did more from his general education class, but we could not make this teacher do the gifted identification paperwork. But what we could do was we could address the specific situations in the classroom. We talked to this teacher and we said, you know, we understand every child has to sit somewhere in your classroom. Could you rotate our son so that he isn't always responsible for helping the students sitting next to him understand the work? We also went to outside sources. We went and found local community classes. We set up reading challenges at home. We even set up computer gaming challenges. Obviously, those were the favorite. But we also enlisted the help of their teachers who could, through music or through art or through computer class, to help keep him interested and involved. And I will admit to you, this was a really hard year for us. It was elementary school for us. It was a hard year. And that year for us ended with a meeting with our principal to say, hey, can we ask that next year's teacher be someone that understands a student, who learns quickly, retains knowledge, who possibly knew how to handle students a little bit better who were above grade level. But there are you cannot change other people's actions. And there are times when you cannot change other people's attitudes. And sometimes you have to work with the situation that you're in.
Thank you so much, Tracy. That was all really great advice from that parent perspective. So it's so important to recognize that there are times where, as you said, that you might know from the beginning that you don't have many outs, right? And what do you do that you feel like you're backed in a corner? That's all really great advice. Christine, can you add to our conversation, dear?
Yeah, very little, because we had two really great responses already. I would say for parents of children who are identified gifted, if we're having a challenging year, lots of conversations at home, like Tracy was saying, about what to do when you are bored, what to do when you are not challenged, what to say, how to help your child navigate these situations. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more later on. Some of the questions are quite direct about what to do when we're not being challenged. But it's about advocating for their own giftedness. It's incredibly important that the children know when they're not being challenged. And they're like a race car. If they're not taken out on the track and run around a couple times, they're gonna lose their edge. Eventually, they will gear back. It's really incredibly important, as Tracy was sharing, these strategies to keep them engaged and to keep their mind sharp and thinking critically and creatively. Where I really earned my pay when I worked at the district was working with parents who received what I call the no letter, or the not now, not yet letter. And that's when we tested a child for gifted services, and we did not find the need for a different educational experience beyond the traditional classroom. And my advice to parents, you talk about a frustrating experience. The parents knew their child was different. And what Tracy was saying, you just couldn't convince the teacher otherwise. When testing children for gifted services, we will look at scores, certainly. I mean, there has to be some kind of it's more than a feeling. But we also look at people and look at the person and look at the child and make decisions what we believe is in the best interest of the child. And in those cases, and if a parent receives a not yet letter, it's so important that the family works together to make sure that child knows that they do have gifts and talents. It's not yet, but a child is only pulled out in my state for gifted services in the elementary schools for 2.5 hours a week, 2.5 hours a week. Well, what's going on the rest of the week? Well, they're in the same art class, the same music class, the same classes as the other children. And so ask for those challenging assignments and do a little extra, do something different, do something more to keep stretching your child. And I'm so glad Tracy brought up the arts, because that is absolutely critical in a child's development, having them involved in some sort of physical activity, whether it's karate, dance, swimming, what have you. And then music appreciation, anything beyond the screen. Because yes, they all want to be YouTube influencers, but we're realizing how much the screen time is cutting down on our ability to engage the brain, beyond the flash, and get them into reading books, etc. So control what we can control. And that goes for our gifted kids and our non-gifted kids. On a recent visit, and I'll sum up with this, on a recent visit with one of my grands, she came home from school and she had a huge blue dot at the end of her nose. And I said, "What? How did that get there?" And she says, "Well, I was bored in class." And this is a child who is in a quite gifted, but in a general education class in the 5th grade, and is bored out of her mind. I said, rather than drawing on yourself, how about you just tell yourself one of those creative stories that you do? So the child can learn to control their time inside their mind if they've already finished their assignments and doing whatever, rather than tutoring the child at the other side of the room. Have them pull out a piece of paper, have them get on the keyboard and create.
Thank you, Christine, so much for adding to that conversation. And my older son came home and self-drew tattoos that were actually a map of a war battle he was learning about in history, and he had a whole nother plan for how that battle could have looked if the other side just did this one thing. And he had all different color pens all over his arm, and I was
That's
like,
Fascinating. Actually, what did it have anything to do with Pennsylvania history or anything like that?
Nope, they're learning about the beginning of the United States right now.
Oh, that is fascinating. I'm sorry.
But he found a way to occupy himself as your granddaughter did with her blue nose. So it just made me laugh when you said that. Because I was like, I just had that happen with my 9th grade son.
I'll add
It
this
was a
very
whole
quick.
map on his arm. So.
I just, that is just so genius. I'll add this very quickly. Do you know that there's 2 endings to the movie Titanic? They filmed 2 endings. And the ship still goes down, but the 2 endings, and I hope I'm not ruining this for anybody, but when Granny throws the necklace into the sea, we all know she drops it into the sea and that's the end of the movie, blah, blah, blah. They actually filmed another ending where they discover that she has the necklace, the diamond of the sea or whatever, and that's a whole different ending. So when you finish the show, the book, the movie, as a family or parent, caregiver, discuss, well, how would you end this movie, or what's a different way that we can end this movie and the characters, and just having those kind of conversations, just a way to extend it. And I love the fact that we have a whole new battle plan for the Battle of Trenton.
Yep. Okay, Tracy, we're going to start our next question with you, which kind of builds off of, what can parents do for different things, and some of the comments you had when you were sharing with us recently. The question is, how do you recommend parents find like-minded individuals or groups to advocate with, especially in the areas where gifted resources may be limited?
Sure. So one of the biggest pieces of information to start with is that in most places, you as a parent cannot be told what other students are or are not in the gifted program. It is a privacy matter, like students who have ADHD or students who have Down syndrome. Being in the gifted program is a privacy issue. And what we found in our local district was we asked our gifted teacher to send communications to the families on our behalf. We started very simply by saying, hey, we're going to go to a local coffee house on this particular date at this particular time. And we invited other parents to just come talk to each other and meet. And we said, we would like to start a group. We would like to, be able to talk with other people who have, things in common, because we all know our gifted children's needs and quirks are very unique. I also found that when I attended events, I would talk to other people. I will just tell you, you will find out very quickly that there are some clunker parents out there. But if you are at a soccer game, if you are at the Taekwondo class, if you are at a PTO meeting or swim lessons, you can talk to other parents and get a feel for them. There are going to be some clunkers, as I said, but you might also find a soulmate. I try to tell people to keep an open mind and listen. A parent who has a child who is gifted in music is searching for connections, just like a parent whose child is gifted in math. The other thing that we encourage people to do is to have events and to put out general invitations for them. And my example on this one is we have an arboretum here in our town that does geocaching events that are open to the public. And so we asked our gifted teacher to send a message to the families that said, hey, we are going to do geocaching on Saturday. We're going to meet in the parking lot at 3 p.m. and anybody that wants to join us can go ahead and come. And we use that to let kids meet each other and to let parents meet each other. And communication is really the hardest issue because of the privacy issues, but really it is just about talking to people and being willing, to try to organize a coffee, to try to say, hey, we're going to geocache today. So it really is just about reaching out to other people.
Thank you so much, Tracy. We are kind of getting a little tight on our timeline. So I do want to see, Christine, Simone, do you have any additional thoughts on how our parents can find some like-minded individuals or groups?
I can add quickly, except there's someone knocking at my front door. So if you hear knocking, I don't know if they're doing political door knocking or or someone selling popcorn as a fundraiser, but just know that I'm next to my front door. But I would also say local libraries. We have usually like a once a month game night at our library, so you can find people that might be interested in the same games or online games that you might be, different book groups or different clubs. I know we also have a chess tournament every year at our local library, and then they go and compete against other local libraries then to finally have a county library championship. So that might be something. You also can look through online. There's a multitude of resources, including Facebook groups. There's blogs and podcasts. And then also, if you Google, parent groups and things, you also might find, as before, like I mentioned, NAGC or SANG, which we put in the chat. But you could also, there's lots of chat recently on neurodiversity. So I know a lot of our parents of gifted children might also be dealing with like anxiety or ADHD or potential different things that your child has, different labels beyond just being labeled as gifted. The Bell and Blank Center has information, or Hoagie's is another one. Davidson Institute, Mensa is another one for highly profound gifted students. The Center for Talented Youth, which is considered like CTY, is another one. And then if you're looking for resources at home, one other one that I would, and then I'll be done, but it would be the Gifted Homeschoolers Forum is another one that you might want to network with, just to find, if you're frustrated with trying to find creative things to do with your child at home, that might be another resource for you to be able to connect with. So those would be mine. Christine, do you have any others?
I do think, and all those ideas are absolutely on point. I would say, if limited resources, introduce your child to, and this works for any age, to a great biography about a person of eminence. I'm holding up one of my favorite biographies we use in the elementary, but it has lessons for adults as well. It's called The Girl with a Mind for Math, the story of Ray Montague, who was born here in Little Rock. But she was the first person, not just the first female, but the first person to design a naval vessel using a computer. And the story is absolutely fascinating. So biographies, a good biography will introduce your child to a person of eminence who had the same struggles or same challenges, but yet through their passion and challenges, overcame everything. Another one is great, The Girl Who Thought in Pictures. Now, Temple Grandin has authored many books. Her autobiography is absolutely fantastic. As you know, she is autistic, and she thinks differently, and her books are absolutely fantastic and written at all sorts of levels. So I'll say a great biography.
Thank you, Christine and Simone and Tracy. You're all sharing so much stuff. I'm glad we're recording because I'm typing as quick as I can as you're all sharing. So just a reminder to any of our attendees that maybe joined us after, we will have a note sheet and we will get that out to all of you along with the link to the recording for you to listen and watch back. So we are working on a nice streamlined note page with all of the resources that are being shared. And also, if we don't get to all of the questions that came through the chat, Jessica and I are also keeping track of those. And last time we kind of sent any unanswered live questions out to our panelists and asked them to kind of send us their thoughts, and they were included in our notes page last time as well. So if we don't get to answer your question live tonight, we will get you a response from our panelists still in the follow-up to today's event. Our next question, which I think is a very important one, they've all been important, but in what ways can parents help their gifted children become self-advocates as they grow older? And we're going to start with Christine, go to Simone, and round this question out with Tracy.
Okay, well, quickly, I thought of three things. I thought, number one, patience. Patience with your child as they learn to advocate for their needs. And practice at home with you where it's very safe. Have them practice asking for challenging assignments or alternative assignments, and learning those phrases that will just help them have those conversations. It's very scary to approach the teacher privately and ask for different work, and they've got to learn that and how to do that. And I would say have them watch you model how do you ask for a different assignment. And I love Tracy's word, you do it with politeness and you do it with privacy and with intention. So have the child watch that process so that they can learn how to advocate for themselves. Have them practice for a job interview, have them practice for introducing themselves. These little life skills are so important. I would say, and never give up on your child. I can't tell you how many times, unfortunately, I've heard in the teacher lunchroom in middle school, so many will know this, that, oh, that child can't be gifted. They're not gifted in my classroom. There's no way that they were gifted, but they were identified in second grade as an advanced learner, and that label stays with them all the way through until whenever. People change, and it's very difficult growing up in the middle grades and becoming a high schooler. And when you're more interested in something else than your academics, just don't give up on your child, and just believe in them and the fact that those gifts are there and they will serve them well as an adult. We all made it through somehow.
All right, thank you, Christine. Simone?
Sure, I would just echo what Christine said about mentoring your children through those your own actions. And it might sound as an adult crazy to be like, I've got to like verbalize this and work through it verbally, because a lot of times our gifted kids think that we're, as adults, perfect and that we get everything on the first time. But if we really verbalize each step of the process, to kind of help them get to the point where they can advocate on their own. I also, for my middle schoolers, will sit down if they come to my office and complain about something, or they're frustrated that, their teacher doesn't have enough time at the beginning or the end of the class to really, address some things that they would like to talk about. I always ask them and help them craft some emails to those teachers to say, like, tomorrow or Friday, I would like to talk to you about such and such. Maybe it's, more difficult math problems, or maybe it's an instance of bullying or seat placement. And so that teacher knows, at the beginning of the day, before that bell rings, I need to talk to Sarah today because, she has something that she really wants to talk to me about. But, sometimes as a teacher, we're, thinking about, what we have to get covered in 43 minutes. Or, I've got to do all of these other things throughout the day. And sometimes, if we don't know what's on a child's mind and we kind of like rush into the next thing, which often happens because we have so many different responsibilities to do, those emails can be quite brilliant in advocating for children. Also, instead of complaining, ask how you could solve the problem. So just like Christine said, like, you can sit there and complain, you're bored, but how do you advocate for yourself? Is it, going out and reaching outside of yourself, or is it something that you could potentially solve internally? You could also know that you acknowledge your mistakes and that they're okay. And we learn best from our mistakes. And then also establishing those ongoing long-term relationships to strengthen confidence and build resiliency. So those would be mine for that self-advocacy.
Thank you, Simone. Tracy?
Well, I am going to go back to the part of the question that says, how do you want to help gifted children become self-advocates as they grow older? And I want to say, don't wait until they are older. You can start with small things when your children are younger. Learning how to order their own food from a waiter or a waitress in a restaurant is advocating for themselves. Asking a librarian about finding new books on a favorite topic, that is advocating. Let them make their own case for, are they going to play and then do their homework, or are they going to do their homework and then play? That is them making a decision and building a case and speaking up for themselves. And, you know, just as was already mentioned, I am a firm believer in practicing these conversations. You know, if your child needs to talk to a teacher, have them practice on you, because you can mix them saying geometry is boring. No, you can help them find a better way to say, hey, I already know about this unit about finding area. You know, what else can we do? As a parent, you can be there to support your child without being the mouthpiece. Advocating as a child is a learned skill, and there are very few people that are born with that skill. There are some children that will easily ask for help. They will easily ask for different work. They will easily tell a teacher what's going on. A lot of the kids will have to be dragged into those discussions. And so, yes, support your child, let them practice on you, and you can't even walk in the room and sit in the room with them, but let them do the talking. It is something that they can't succeed at until they actually do it for themselves.
Thank you so much, Tracy. I think those are great points, especially like you're saying, like starting younger and giving them some of those options of, you know, like you said, asking a librarian about other books, you know, from the same author, or, you know, ordering, you know, that food on a restaurant. You know, there are things we can do younger and build their skills over time. Because if we have them prepared for success, they're gonna, you know how to respond when they get to those challenging situations versus shutting down because they don't have that skill set. So I'm trying to be mindful of time. We are at 7:52. And so at this time, I want to check in with Jessica and see if there are some like burning questions. I think we have quite a few from the chat that maybe we can have one person like respond to on the panel and give a little advice now, and we can try to get through a couple of them. And any we don't get to, again, we'll send them out to the panelists and we will get responses and include them in the notes. So Jessica, do you have a burning question that we can throw out to one of the panelists?
Yes, it's really hard to choose here because there's so many great questions in the chat. And as Callie said, we'll make sure that our panelists have a chance to respond to all of them within the follow-up documents. But one theme that seems to be coming up from multiple people asking about when their child doesn't fit exactly what the teacher expects a gifted child to look like, when perhaps they aren't achieving in every area equally, or they have some skills that are developing asynchronously. Maybe they have a very high academic set of skills, but maybe something age appropriate that is about organization or time management or something. How can parents advocate for needs that maybe need some support along with the challenge and stretch? So multiple people asked about that, and you know, kids maybe not finishing all their homework or not staying motivated. So teachers are wondering, you know, why they aren't looking as gifted as they should.
Do we have a panelist that's willing to kind of share a little tidbit on this one? And then we'll see what the next burning question is.
I'll jump in very quickly. This is so common. I can't begin to tell you how common it is. So the people on our discussion tonight spent hours discussing this very issue in our courses. It is a matter of teacher experience. It is a matter of experience as a parent, experience as a child. Giftedness shows up in every kind of different form that you could possibly imagine. And schools are designed to provide academic and some enrichment experiences, but it's basic, you know, it's academic learning. So again, do not let anybody tell you that your child is not gifted. yes, they are, that their gifts are always changing and shifting, especially as the mind is developing. That algebra thing is still throwing our middle school girls into chaos when they think that they can't do math. Yes, they can. They're just going to get to do math later on. They'll be brilliant at it. We just got to grow up a little bit first. So I wrote one piece down, and that I had my kids, my two boys, my two wrangly boys, at a very, very early age, learn that there's no such thing as surprising mother. Because I was a teacher, and I have nothing else. I am organized with checklists, and my checklists have checklists. So they know that you don't come home on a Thursday night and tell me that a poster board is due on Friday. We planned everything. Communication with your children is absolutely critical. That is just something that we learned as a family, and through Hard Knocks and everything else. But that really helped them be successful and get over some of those humps about the homework, and because that's going to happen everywhere. But just try to keep your child motivated intrinsically inside, rather than the Game Boy system or something like that on the weekends. Just help them help them learn the joy of learning.
Thank you, Christine. Simi, I see you unmuted. Do you have a little bit to share
Sure.
on this one? And then we'll see what another question is that Jessica has before we have to call time.
Sure. I would just say that, that's where, if we're talking about homework, where that communication between parents and teachers is essential. So maybe, they don't want to do 50 problems of the same exact repetitious content. So maybe it's okay if the parent sees that they've done 3 questions right, can they move on to something else? Or can they explore a mathematician? Or can they do an experiment with that math skill? Maybe it's, budgeting and estimating Thanksgiving dinner. And so they're doing, double digit decimal multiplication. And yet, we want to try to get closest to $50 for a family meal instead of just doing those problems over and over again. So I would say that it is essential for that relationship, so you can help your students, not burn out, or then also not feel bored.
Thank you, Simone. Jessica, do you want to pick one other question to answer live for us? I know that's a tall order because there are so many of them, but we will get you answers from our panelists in our notes page, and and the recording that's coming out to you all. Jessica?
The very last question, I think we could answer this one maybe with just one tip each from the panelists, but this one came up early on, but I think it's important, about how to help your child when they feel different, when they can sense that they're not clicking with their peers for whatever reason. Maybe that's the peers in their regular classroom, or maybe it's the peers in their gifted classroom, but how to help them with that emotional identity piece of who am I and how do I fit in?
My advice is that the apple doesn't fall far from a tree. Have the parent talk about their own experiences as a child. Find a wonderful book, a biography. This is find a biography, find a book. There's answers in books.
And I would also say, go ahead, Tracy.
No, I was gonna just follow up and say, absolutely agree with them that sometimes everybody feels like they don't fit. And I think a lot of times having friends outside of their school is good for kids, that they can have other relationships with somebody who they are not with 8 or 9 hours a day. Having lots of different friends is a good thing. You can have a friend at swim lessons. You can have a friend on your baseball team. You can be friends with your piano teacher. You can be friends with the kid that sits next to you in math. All of those things are good for kids to widen their worlds.
And I totally would agree. It doesn't necessarily need to be someone chronologically their age, but also they can be doing mentoring. They can be doing, maybe it's tutoring, a classmate or someone that they say that they're 2 grade levels above in math, and they find someone in 9th grade that is struggling with math. They could help them. Or it could be, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts. It could be the YMCA. Again, the local libraries have a plethora of different organizations, or you maybe even, you know, where Tracy's talking about getting a group together, maybe that could be at the library, and, you know, having a theme night where it could be advertised to everyone in the community, but then also the gifted teacher could, you know, push that resource out to the parents. I think that that's important, to use your local resources that you have available to you. And then also too, like when those parent groups are meeting, I also, as a gifted coordinator, made my high school kids come down and kind of be the babysitters for those younger kids so that the parents could network. So they would get National Honor Society hours for volunteering. So that's something else where like high school kids are always looking for leadership abilities, and then volunteer hours for their resumes. I think that that's important too, that you can kind of, and then those gifted adults or, you know, high schoolers could also share their experiences with those kids that might be struggling to say, hey, I was once there, and they might not necessarily want to hear it from adult, but they'll hear it from someone else that might go to their school district.
Thank you, everyone. Those are great answers. And I'm sorry we can't keep answering questions because even now more interesting questions are coming in the chat. So Callie, unless you have anything else, I think we've got to wrap up because it's now a minute past our time, but I think this has been so informative. I want to say thank you.
No, I have nothing else. I agree. It's been great and very informative. And you know, thank you to our panelists for, you know, being willing to not just do one session, but 2 sessions with us and sharing your expertise, knowledge, and time. So Jessica, I don't know if you have any other wrap-up notes, but
we will be continuing this webinar series next year, so be on the lookout for more webinars that are free and open to all parents next year, as well as some specific chat time webinars for parents who are NAGC members. So we will continue sharing these with you because it's been such a good experience. Look for more in 2025.
yes, and those chat sessions are more open-ended and informal and not recorded, where you can kind of unmute and interact with our experts. So just so you know, different format. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.